Good evening, my friends. I'm coming on a couple minutes early because Spectrum has been acting crazy with our internet today. It's been since the beginning of the month. My poor husband's lost 4 hours of work today. You know, the whole neighborhood page is outraged. So we're gonna believe that the internet stays on long enough for me to get through this live and that it does not shut down like it has been doing since November 1st. We've received various reasons as to why this is happening, but bottom line is they need to fix it. So Tam did a deal and she said no November, and I like that. And I'm calling this series Knowing November, and this is knowing yourself, being self-aware. Excuse me. I'm actually writing a workshop for thank you, Tam, for my business, a leadership workshop. And I wanted to adapt some corporate truths with some biblical truths and make it something I can take into churches. And so then the Lord challenged me to talk about this stuff with my sisters. So obviously, yes, yes, all day long to that. So I just pray that the Lord gives me the words to speak, and I speak nothing but what the Spirit breathes in me to speak, in Jesus' name. So knowing yourself, knowing November, and that is embracing your emotions so you can overcome them. I know a lot of us women, especially if you've been put in a position where you're single, we tend to shut our emotions down. We don't want to feel them. We don't want to deal with them. We don't want to be associated with them. And sometimes it's a taught thing. It's generational, right? We're taught by the women in our family that emotions are weakness. And I was similarly raised. The women in my family are very stoic, not emotional at all. And here I come. I think I came out of the womb crying and have not stopped since. So it was interesting to be me growing up in a family that doesn't display emotions, because I display all of them loudly. But I wanted to look and see how, because Jesus himself was recorded 3 times in the Bible, and it always describes him as weeping, and in one instance in Hebrews 5, it said loud cries and tears. So Jesus was doing what we might call boohooing. Like, he was grieving in his spirit. He was crying. It said he was loud, these loud cries and tears. And there's just a few times, like in Luke 13:34, the shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept, but it's also one of the most profound because it shows us that Jesus felt emotions. He grieved when his friends were grieving, and he grieved for his people that he loved. So I want to show you that there's actually a strength in being self-aware, knowing your emotions. Where do they come from? They come from somewhere. There's always a why. And embracing that and ultimately overcoming that emotion, getting the better of you. And I just want you to know that you can look in Luke 13, John 11, and Hebrews 5 and see that Jesus definitely understands the emotion of weeping. And so I always say it takes more strength to acknowledge our emotions than it does to ignore them. I'd rather have more control over them than over me. And failing to acknowledge our feelings only causes more pain because it seeps out in ways we don't intend. Maybe you become an angry mother and you scream at your kids. Maybe you fly off the handle at your significant other and you're treating them in a way that, if you really sat and thought about it, don't line up with your values. It's not who you want to be. But because you haven't dealt with an emotion, it's coming out, whether you like it or not. And maybe you become negative at work and you're really not portraying the person that you want to be to others. And that is because we need to stop and acknowledge our emotions. And this is called, in business terms, this is self-awareness. And it's a very, very powerful tool, because if you understand your emotions, not only how they affect you, but how your emotions affect others, you're definitely a step ahead of the crowd. As I've been doing this study, I look back on times in my career and in my life, and I literally just cringe. You remember that music in The Wizard of Oz when the main ladies come in, that that's how I picture people used to see me coming. Because I was always gonna tell somebody about something. I was always just irritated about something. I just know that my old boss would just sit in his office and be like, oh God, here she comes, what now? Definitely not what I want, because automatically he's not hearing what I have to say. And so my family too. But what I didn't realize is I was preventing others from hearing my very valid points and my ideas, because I was reactive. I was reacting emotionally. So we have to learn to move past the initial emotion and get to rational thought. And so knowing this and having this ability is huge, because it's actually in your brain. The emotion comes up through your brainstem into the emotional frontal part, then it goes into the logical part. And so if you can learn the pause, and let your thoughts get to the rational thinking and not reacting out of emotion, that's a huge gift, and anybody can learn to do this. So, and what I'm talking about is emotional intelligence, and I realize it's something that not a lot of people know about, and you should. So just like we have an IQ that measures your intelligence, your scholastic intelligence, your EQ is your emotional intelligence. Now here's what's cool about it. You can't change your IQ. How you learn at 5 is how you learn at 15 is how you learn at 50. That's who you are. How your IQ is it's distinct. It's your intellect. That doesn't change. Your EQ, however, EQ is something you can develop. And statistically speaking, people with higher EQs, they make more money. So quite a bit more. And there's 4 core skills of emotional intelligence that we're going to go over, and we're going to parallel with scripture, because this, as I was studying through this, I'm like, because I really wanted to draw the spiritual side to the corporate emotional intelligence piece. Number 1 is self-awareness, which we've kind of talked about. Number 2 is self-management. Number 3 is social awareness. And number 4 is relationship management. And so I'm going to give you some stats, because EQ is a flexible skill. It's so critical. I wish I could emphasize this more, but it accounts for 58% of performance in all types of jobs. All types of jobs, not just corporate jobs. The link is so direct that every point you increase your EQ, it adds $1,300 to an annual salary. So people with higher EQs make, on average, $29,000 more than people with a lower EQ. And as we work through this, you'll start to understand why. It's because you are using all of these skills to move yourself ahead, to get what you want and need, and to be heard and seen in all the right ways. And that's all industries, all levels. So I don't care what your job is, you can actually use this on your job and use it at home. And it's just a really valuable tool. And a lot of it is understanding your emotions and having control over them. So I want to show how the word backs this up as well. So Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is more deceitful than all else. So when someone tells you to trust your heart, that's actually contradictory to what the word says. Your heart, your feelings will deceive you. Those things are in the moment. They're not always the right thing, and certainly shouldn't be your go-to. So don't trust your heart. It says it right here. The heart is more deceitful than all else. So that's pretty big, right? Psalms 5:9 says, there is nothing reliable in what they say. Their inward part is destruction itself. It's talking about emotions. Their throat is an open grave. They flatter with their tongue. So this is backing up also, actions speak louder. Because if you get past the emotion of something and you make the appropriate action, that's the real you. That's what you really want to be getting across. Psalm 62:4. They have counseled only to trust him down from his high position. They delight in falsehood. They bless with their mouth, but inwardly they curse. So the bottom line is emotions can be deceiving. We can't rely on them. So let's talk strategies, right? Number one, we need to quit treating our emotions as good or bad. Emotions just are. So when you start to assign a good or a bad to an emotion, that can actually kind of lead you where you don't need to go. And the downfall to attaching a label to your emotions is that judging your emotions keeps you from really understanding what it is that you're feeling. When you allow yourself to sit with an emotion and become fully aware of it, you can understand what's causing it. Suspending judgment of emotions allows them to run their course and vanish. Passing judgment on whether you should or shouldn't be feeling what you are feeling just heaps more emotions on top of the pile and prevents the original feeling from running its course. Wow, right? So the next time you feel an emotion begin to build, take notice of it immediately. Refrain from putting it into a good or a bad category, and remind yourself that the feeling is there to help you understand something important. So no good or bad, just look at it for what it is. Number 2, this is a big one, and this is one that I struggled with. Observe the ripple effect from your emotions. So a lot of times we're reactionary with our emotions, but we don't stop and think of how whatever outburst we just had affects people around us, whether it's our family, friends, co-workers. Whatever emotion I've displayed is going to have a ripple effect. So you don't knowingly set out to cause people discomfort. So the same thing with our emotions. So, and this is a good example. Let's say you have a manager at work that loses their cool and he berates an employee in front of the rest of the team. So when this lashing happens, it may seem that the manager's target is the only one whose feelings getting bruised, but the ripple effect from the manager's explosion affects all who witness it. So here's what's happening. The rest of the team members, they wander back to their desks. They feel the manager's wrath. They may have a pit in their stomachs. They're wondering, when's it going to be my turn, right? And this can happen at home too, so you can see the parallel with this. The manager's thinking his tirade was good for productivity because the rant scared people straight. But their fear soon settles into caution. To perform at their best, the team members should feel free to take risks, stretch themselves beyond their comfort zone, and even make some mistakes along the way. But because this manager has acted in this way, it shuts all that down. So no one on the team wants to be the manager's next target. So the team members play it safe and only do as they're told. So their manager gets, docked on his bonus later for leading a team that fails to take the initiative. And he wonders what's wrong with the team. This is someone that's definitely not self-aware, and this can happen at home too. You may be going through something and you're ranting around your house to the point where your family is scared to approach you on some matters, especially when you have young kids and teens. You want them to feel like they can come to you. This is really when we need to manage the ripple effect of our emotions. Your emotions are powerful weapons, and continuing to think their effects are instant and minimal will only do you a disservice. The key to observing the ripple effects of your emotions is to watch closely how they impact other people immediately, and then use that information as a guide for how your emotions are bound to affect a wider circle long after you've unleashed the emotion. So you'll also, what I think is going to be something you need to do is ask other people how they are affected by your emotions. People that you trust. Because the more you understand how your emotions ripple outward, the better equipped you'll be to choose the types of ripples you want to create. So that is the ripple of observing the ripple effect. So ask people that you trust or that are close to you. You know, when I exploded the other day, like, how did that make you feel? And when you have that boomerang back at you, it'll really make you stop and think about how you handle the situation the next time. So another strategy, which is one some of us have a hard time with, is lean into your discomfort. What does that mean? So the biggest obstacle, I think, to increasing your self-awareness is the tendency to avoid discomfort that comes from seeing yourself as you really are. This is when we talk about taking that long look in the mirror at ourselves, right? Things you do not think about are off your radar for a reason. They can sting when they surface. So avoiding this pain creates problems because it's merely a short-term fix. You'll never be able to manage yourself effectively if you ignore the things that we need to change. So rather than avoiding a feeling, what I'm saying is your goal should be to move toward the emotion. Move into it, because you can't move through it until you move into it. Ignoring your feelings does not make them go away. On the contrary, it just helps them surface again when you least expect them to. And so to be effective in life, we need to discover our own arrogance. Ouch. Those things we don't bother to learn about or dismiss as unimportant. Those things can come across arrogant. I'm not going to bother to learn about this. I'm dismissing this because it's not important to me. But you're missing out on huge opportunities when you do that, because it comes across as arrogance. So you may have a person that thinks apologizing is a weakness. So you never learn to recognize when one is needed. Another person hates feeling down, so they constantly distract themselves with meaningless activity and never really feel content. So like, I don't want to feel down, so I'm going to do all these things. But all those things don't address the emotion of feeling down. They just keep you from dealing with what you need to deal with. And so both of these scenarios need to make a bold step in leaning into the feeling that will motivate them to change. And that's the key, right? Otherwise, you'll continue down an unproductive, unsatisfying path, repeating same patterns over and over, wondering why you can't get ahead sometimes, right? So the surprising thing about increasing being aware of yourself, self-awareness, is just thinking about it. Just thinking about it will help you change. Just thinking about being more self-aware is a huge change in itself. And so even though much of your focus will initially be on maybe things you're doing wrong, don't be afraid of your emotional mistakes. They tell you what you should be doing differently. They're teaching you a lesson, and they provide you with a steady stream of information you need to understand as your life unfolds. Or these things are going to pop up and you're not going to know what to do. You're not going to be equipped. You're just going to react emotionally, which isn't healthy. And I kind of wanted to stop there because there's several strategies, and I don't want to overwhelm, because what I've already asked you to do is quit treating your emotions as good or bad, observe the ripple effect, and lean into your discomfort. Those three things are those are good first steps. And I had to learn also too, there were times early in my marriage where my husband would be a little bit more emotional than I thought he should have been. And so I was actually kind of mean because I shut down my own emotions. I didn't allow other people to feel theirs. That was my ripple effect. And so once we just had a heart to heart, and I realized me shutting down not only his emotions, but, my daughter's emotions was very detrimental to my relationships with them. And I had to take a big step back and look at the why. Why am I feeling this emotion? And then I became aware of what physically happens to me when I'm feeling these emotions. So I can maybe look for a trigger. Do I get that pit in my stomach? Am I getting sweaty? Is my heart racing? Kind of making a mental note of things. It's kind of like, I'll use a work example because this is something that to this day I struggle with. Let's say you're going into a meeting at work and there's going to be a person in the meeting that likes to hear themselves talk. They are going to tell a novel every time they speak, and you go in there with your ideas and then they start talking and you just get frustrated because they're just taking up all the air in the room. They just go into just nonsense. And I had to really study and think of, why does this person irritate me so much? Why is this something that prohibits me? I have a plan going in, and I go in, the person irritates me, and then I don't say what I went in there to say. I have ideas, good ideas, that I end up not sharing because this person has irritated me so much. So I had to really think, why did this person irritate me so much? And that's because I had a time in my life where I felt like I was in someone's shadow, where I was constantly shut down. I couldn't say what I wanted to say, and I was attaching that experience to this person. So once I kind of figured that out, I could now go into these meetings, prepared. I knew this person was going to be there. I knew they're going to irritate me. But now I could strategize. I could be, okay, I'm aware of this irritation. I'm not going to let it bother me. I have a plan. I have things I want to say, and I'm going to be assertive and say them in a way that's not emotional. Because I can tell you, I had great ideas at one job, and I actually kept myself from a big promotion because I didn't have control of my emotions then like I do now. I had great ideas. I didn't have a great way of converting those to my bosses. So something would irritate me, and that's when I would usually have the guts to go say what I had to say. Here I'd go, marching into their office. They already know I'm irritated about something. So really what I had to say, was it being heard in a way it needed to be heard? So no matter how great my ideas were, or how great I thought I could have been at this next level, I actually held myself back, because the only time I went and presented ideas to people is when I was mad enough to go voice my concern about something, instead of picking times when I was calm and able to relay what I wanted to say in a calm way. So I encourage you to study up on what emotional intelligence is, because for a lot of years, the only people that really learned about this was, elite people, higher ups, executive management type people. And honestly, everybody needs to know what their EQ is and how to improve it, because it doesn't just improve you in the workplace, which is what I want for you. I want all my sisters to make more money, but it also makes you more successful at home and over yourself. So knowing yourself, November, means embracing your emotions so you can overcome them, being aware. So if you could picture maybe, how hawks they fly above everything and they see all that's going on, and people just, go about their day, and the hawk can probably predict where this thing's going and that thing's going. Obviously we can't be hawks, but kind of have that mindset to where you're looking at your life in a bigger scope, not just what's immediately in front of you, and see how one thing affects another thing, and understand that it is okay to have an emotion. It's not a weakness. It's okay to cry. That's not a weakness. Crying is a release. That is you working through something that is causing you a big emotion. It's not always pain. It's not always sadness. Sometimes I cry because I think something's really sweet. I'm not going to not be that person. That's who God created me to be. I'm sensitive, so I don't apologize for that. What I can do is know that I'm sensitive and not react to being sensitive emotionally, and recognizing those things as they come and dealing with them, and not, raging on people or just letting them hurt my feelings, or, operating out of that space. So, and that's really what I'm just asking, is you just stop and acknowledge the emotion and learn what a powerful tool it is, because that's how you move through it. Because none of us really like to lash out at the people that we love, but that's what you do when you don't take the time to stop and deal with your emotion. And so self-awareness is step one, is very key. And we can talk more about the 4 core skills. And the next one would be self-management. Well, we've got a lot more self-awareness to work through. But I've given you some homework, so it's a flexible skill. Remember, it's something you can improve. And so, and here's what's cool. This is how you get a leg up. If you want to go to that next step, or you maybe want to be more confident when you're going into job interviews, or more sure of yourself, most of that comes from just being self-aware. And so if you'll just kind of purpose in your heart to work on these things, I know the Lord will meet you and work through those with you, because Jesus felt heartbreak. He felt emotions. He felt joy and pain. And so don't ever think that God doesn't understand, or God would ever want someone to think they're so strong because they don't have emotional, they don't allow themselves emotions. That's actually, to me, to ignore your emotion is more of a weakness than a strength, because there's strength in acknowledging the thing and taking it before the Lord and saying, you know what, this is hard and I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it because it's going to grow me, because I don't want to be stuck here. I don't want to just keep bursting out, or things to spill over in ways that are ugly. This is my value system, and I want to make sure I'm sticking to my system of values. And that's not happening when I'm letting emotions run away from me, thinking that I'm not actually breaking down, but it is breaking me down when I'm not doing that. So I hope this blessed you. This has just been something that's been heavy on my heart, that I've been studying through, and that I'm working on. And I definitely wanted to present it to my sisters first, and I would love your feedback. If you're going through some emotions, ask yourself. I used to have a teacher say, ask why 3 times. I'm feeling this way. Why? Because of this. Okay, well, why? Okay, that. Okay, why? Maybe that's the root. So just keep asking yourself why, and be blessed. And thank you for hanging in here with me. Love you guys.